Okay.
Waiting for it to start. Okay, so it is now being recorded. I want to welcome everyone to our session 2. This is using an OER textbook to create online mini lessons for a composition program. And it's going to be given to you by Rachel Rigolino, if I pronounced that correctly.
Correct.
And Rachel is happy for you to raise your hand if you have a question, or to put it in the chat. I will be monitoring both. I would ask that you keep yourself on mute, and then if you have a question, and I'll mention, I'll call your name or whatever, and then you can unmute yourself and ask it. So thank you all for coming. I'm going to hand it over to Rachel now.
Oh, thank you. Thank you, Sarah, for that. This is this presentation, and I want it to be interactive. Please, at any point, as Sarah said, just raise your hand and ask a question. I'm going to be talking about creating an OER modules through using this OER textbook and what that was like. And I am the coordinator of our developmental writing program at the State University of New York at New Paltz. So I wanted to start with a definition because OER, kind of the more purist, I would say, for lack of a better term, is this UNESCO definition of what an open educational resource is. And it needs to be something that is openly available for use, whether it be, a textbook or video, other material, an image, by educators, students, without a paywall, right? Without the need to pay royalties or license fees. So we'll start with that definition. Oops, I'm sorry. Go back. Just to give you some context about why we moved in this direction. So our setting, we're in the Hudson Valley. We're a public 4-year regional university. But I was telling Sarah earlier, we are very much, we identify ourselves as being residential. We pull a lot of students from the New York City metropolitan area and Long Island up to SUNY New Paltz. We had, in terms of our English, our composition program, we have 21 sections of composition. Back in the fall of 2020, when this started, the use of OERs, and 8 of those sections were developmental. And I'm going to get to that in a minute to talk about our developmental writing program. You'll see that we were slated to be mostly hybrid, but that meant that some people only met in that hybrid modality maybe during the COVID, during maybe once every other week. Most people met 1 to 2 times a week, but most everything was going to be moving online. So that's what we were faced with, moving a lot of our courses online. So to back up a little bit, because I'm at a CADE conference and I used to really enjoy coming to Baltimore. I was telling Sarah to visit with everyone. Our model, which has been around since 1996, is non-remedial. We have the same course number as all the other sections of composition in 160, and we have the same student learning outcomes. What we do offer is this supplemental writing workshop and also tutoring. So students are plugged into the class and then the workshop, and then they also receive tutoring. So it's quite intensive in terms of the amount of support we are able to offer our students, our basic writing students. So moving into, like many of you, probably everybody, we saw this incredible leap, and perhaps us more so because we are residential. We went from, you can see on the left-hand side of that slide, 350 courses that were either online or hybrid to 1,500 courses just in the fall of 2020. So we were faced with, wow, how are we going to bring all of this instruction online? We're not a 2-year campus. We're not a community college where you all are so used to offering things, many of you, online. It's like second nature. So in the composition program, we began thinking about, what can we do to help instructors? Now, keep this in mind too. We had a group of teaching assistants, and these are people in grad school, most of them traditionally aged, so they're in their, mid-20s. They've never taught before, much less online. What about all of the adjuncts that we had in various, some had been long-term and some were new hires. And can we create an instructional material that maybe isn't tied to a common textbook? Because we leave a lot of choice up to our instructors about what text they can bring in. And then of course we had to align everything with our SLOs. And then what about accessibility? And at this point, we really weren't thinking about cost. That wasn't like a primary thing. I know for many, many people, OER creation is tied to saving students money. But frankly, in composition, our textbooks, especially a used textbook, they're not all that expensive. So our goal, we decided, was, hey, can we put something up on Blackboard? We use Blackboard, unfortunately. We're moving away from that, thank goodness. Just not a very sexy platform, learning management system. But anyway, can we create some mini lessons that can then be copied, maybe, across? Instructors can use this. So when they transition to completely online, they would have material available to them and they can pick and choose from what they wanted. So I raised my hand and said I would do this because I've been teaching online since 1999 and I just enjoy teaching online. It's just one of the things I do. I don't typically teach writing courses online. I teach lit courses online. So I asked myself, no, I don't have time to start from scratch, right? To even to bring in all of my material over the last 25 years and to put it up in a way that looks great. That requires a lot of work. So I said, no, that's not what I wanted to do. So over summer break, right, I began by requesting this course site for what I was going to be creating. But the big thing was to identify an OER textbook. And there are a lot of composition textbook and writing textbooks that are out there. And I began to conceptualize, to be reasonable in the terms of the amount of time I had, how many lessons could I create? I call them mini lessons. I've now changed the name to units. Okay, be that as it may, I thought maybe I could create 10 to 12. So I set that out. So the first thing I needed to do after getting my course site was to identify a text that I could work with. A textbook that had resources that then I could use. So in keeping with the spirit of OER, Wiley came up with this. He's one of the champions of OER. I believe his first name is David Wiley. These 5 R's. So an OER text can be reused. It can be revised. Now it depends. Some people will put things out there they don't want them to be revised, but to be fully OER, the material can be revised, remixed, redistributed, and owners do have a right to own copies of the content. Users do, I mean. So all of these things are out there. The idea that you can reuse material, you can revise it, you can put combinations of OER things together. And that's really kind of best practices in OER. So SUNY has it is at the end of a 3-year agreement with Lumen. And Lumen textbook is a textbook company. Actually, they call themselves Lumen Learning because it's really beyond textbooks. They have quite a developed set of material that is interactive. So it goes beyond a plain print textbook, right? So we're in a agreement with them, which meant that we could use their material and the material would be free to students. Whoops, I'll go back one. I don't know why they did that. All right. So trying to bring it, here we go. I identified this textbook. It's a Lumen textbook, and you can find this out on the web. You can, English Composition 1. And it looked good. It looked at a lot of the chapters aligned with things that we were doing, you know, talking about critical thinking, introduction to college writing, all of that good stuff that, you know, compositionists are very used to teaching, especially in that first semester, acquainting our students with this move to college reading and writing. One thing I would say, point out about Lumen, they use a WordPress type, it is WordPress and it's their own like proprietary platform. And by proprietary, I mean that they support the platform. So if you were used to using WordPress, you would have no trouble with, you know, working with their textbook. So I had a limited amount of experience with WordPress, but it's fairly intuitive and not too techy. So I was okay with that. So building out the mini lessons, this is what we thought. Okay. So each of these units, and again, they're mini lessons / units. I've changed the name of it. And I'm sure many of you that move things online, you had to think about time on task and think about, well, how much time are students spending on this particular series of tasks, okay? So we conceptualize each mini lesson module unit as requiring between 1 to 2 hours of work. And I might even stretch that out. Actually, some of the modules wound up being more, maybe taking 2 to 3 hours. We had to choose topics that would be covered by all instructors so that instructors could actually, this would be useful to them. So again, I went back to our student learning outcomes to get a sense of what topics instructors needed to cover. We wanted to allow instructors, they didn't have to use all the modules, just use what they wanted or needed to. And then also in creating these modules, I wanted to apply the best practices in terms of online pedagogy. So for example, I'm just going to bring up quizzes, for example. Each mini lesson, each unit had a multiple choice quiz. However, in terms of the quiz questions, they were given ahead of time. I did not set a time limit for quizzes. It's not one of these things that you had, you know, 10 minutes to take a quiz. I put no time restrictions on it, and that students could even take it twice to get a higher grade. So when conceptualizing this, the quizzes they come out as a kind of self-check of, did you understand the readings? Did you understand the videos? Almost like a homework self-check. So these quizzes, it was very easy, I found, if students were attending and engaged with the material, for them to receive 80s and above on the quizzes. And here is, for example, a sample quiz where what I did was I gave the questions ahead of time, as I said. So as students looked at the material, either read it or reviewed it, they could find the answers as they went through the material. And then I had an answer key that I hid, and that was for the writing instructors. So in addition to the quiz that, again, they were just very straightforward reading comprehension questions, then I would bring in also each unit had a short answer assignment, or usually a reflective assignment, where I use that assignment tool in Blackboard, and students would upload short answer assignments of about 250 words. And the directions in every case, the directions here were always able to be editable by the instructor. So just because I put up and I posed questions, maybe another instructor would say, well, I don't know what Rachel did here. Let me give some other questions. So all of this, keep in mind, now this was deployed over all of our sections. People could edit things as they wanted to. I said I used the blog feature. It didn't work that well. I just wound up using short answer or sometimes discussion board. All right, so I took a couple of screenshots just to show you. This was the main page of the mini lessons. Again, I've changed the name now to be units. And that's the way they would come into, if you were an instructor, this would be what you would see. They would not be deployed until the instructor deployed them. So you can see each folder contains a mini lesson, and each instructor would set the due date, whatever it would be. And again, you would use as many as you wanted to. So what did the mini lessons, what do they look like inside the folder? It looks just like any other Blackboard folder. Again, in keeping with best practices for online instruction, asynchronous online instruction, usually want to give an overview of, on outside your folder, what are your learning objectives? And then, kind of set up what is in the folder, what do students need to do. I think the only other thing that I do now that I didn't do back then, now I even give students an estimated time for completion, because I find that to be very helpful. Students like to know, oh, okay, so this is a pretty short mini lesson or unit. Now this may take an hour or two of my time. Where a more involved unit, it's nice to know, hey, this may take me 4 hours to complete. So I think estimating time to give students that kind of heads up about how long something will take online is helpful. So if I have no questions.
No questions at this
No
time.
questions. It's all clear. Well, anyway, and I'm going to get into a little bit of the OER stuff in just a minute. So copying from the mini lessons, they would come in like this. They would submit a request to our OIT, that's our Office of Instructional Technology. And these mini lessons were brought right in. The cool thing is I was able, if I saw an error or made changes, that would be distributed across all of the everybody's copy of this. So that was really cool. There were some hiccups, as you can imagine. When you deploy something like this across so many different course sites, yeah, it got a little bit, but it was pretty good. Lumen designers really worked hard with me to make this work, so that was nice of them. So I'm going to ask myself some questions. These are some things about equity. So, and this is on the part of the instructor, okay? So how much revising and remixing did I do with that Lumen textbook? So my Lumen OIT person looked and said, wow, you changed about 50% of this text. And I guess I did. So again, beginning with a text, whether you use Lumen or some other text, I would say if you're going to be doing this in your department, your courses, bring in something so that when you're remixing, you have a base. All right. So I added stuff from Merlot. I added, of course, then I could like supplement all kinds of stuff that I had sitting in, up in my cloud, wherever it is, right? I could bring in what I wanted. added a lot of multimedia stuff, able to add stuff that refer to our comp program. All of our own individual, our department stuff could be brought in. So it was really great, that part of changing the text. And in terms of technical support, I will kind of shill a bit for Lumen because they really did give me some wonderful support. And then our campus OIT, they helped me with Blackboard related stuff. Now, in terms of assessment, I'm at the level now where, this was like, let's throw this together and get it up there. And now I can breathe. Anecdotal feedback was extremely positive from both instructors and students. But of course, remember, keep in mind, I'm using material that had been vetted by Lumen and material from Merlot, that some really first-rate stuff. I was bringing in my own material that I've used for a long time, stuff the composition program had. So it's not like you're going out in the Wild West and there's no kind of curation going on. There is. So, the next step in this would be to take some more time to develop a more useful, a really truly useful assessment tool to see, the strengths and weaknesses of the way I designed the modules. Now, how much work goes into this? Obviously, the front end, a lot of work. It's like putting together your own textbook. And during the semester, there were sporadic problems when people would see a typo or something. So I would go in and fix the typo. Also, over winter break, you have to review, of course, whenever you're putting together something like this, you have to review for broken links. And so forth. In fact, I did that this summer. I've been doing it this summer. I just spent about 4 hours yesterday going back through them and changing some things, and I came across one broken link. So that wasn't too bad. So it is sustainable. Okay, it's a sustainable kind of thing, but it requires constant attentiveness by at least one person, if not a team of people. So the OER revolution, which I really think it is, open educational resources. So now I'm going to kind of go up and be a little more conceptual. I use that black swan in the first slide. And those of you that know Talib's book about the improbable things that happened that revolutionized the world, a black swan is really an outlier. He's very, very specific about that. And to be honest, I don't think OER is I don't think that what happened with the OER kind of revolution, yes, we can predict this. We can see it coming. In fact, he even made the point, he had journalists talking to him about, was COVID a black swan? And he said, no, we could have predicted this. So I think that this movement to OER and then OEP, which is open educational pedagogy, it's such a natural fit to online learning, but also in so many ways, this, striving for equity. So what really pushed open educational resources? And you can see, obviously we've been a lot of talk about the price of educational supplies, right? And books and textbooks, and that really being an obstacle to our students. Again, I'm at a 4-year institution. My students, I would say my first year writing students, my developmental students, would oftentimes not have their textbooks. They'd be 6 weeks or 8 weeks into the course before they would have their quote unquote book money, right? And we all have faced this issue. You notice that little, you see the prices of things going down because frankly, I think the textbook publishers are realizing that so many of us are moving to OER and they're having to adjust. So it's a very exciting time. So in terms of OER and equity, and I think all of us probably are aware of this. This is not like, necessarily something we don't know, but this recent study is interesting because in this study, um, John Hilton did this survey of other studies, right, a lit review, and found that actually students achieve the same or better learning outcomes while using OER and then saving money. So if you are doing maybe positioning yourself with your institution, your administration, and saying, look, I need some time, I need some release time to do this. I think now is a great time to go through the literature and pull this kind of stuff out to create an argument for creating OER initiatives. I stole a slide. I'm the OER lead on my campus, and this is something we just presented yesterday to our provost. Now, we plugged in numbers. These are our projections. Now, of course, we can talk about what our projections and how we plugged in the numbers. But this would be estimated savings. Again, when you're creating an argument to administrators, they're often concerned about the bottom line. So this would be a savings to our students. If I believe we were going for 25% of our first and second year courses using OER textbooks. So we said if we can just get 25% of those courses using OER material, we would save X amount. I think this is especially compelling when we look at the D courses with these high DF and W rates. And I'm sure on people teaching at the 2-year level, institutions, campuses see this a lot, where students just leave. They leave. Or they get there are these gatekeeping courses and they don't earn a high enough grade. So even if they do pass, they're earning only a D+ or something, and they have to retake the course. So again, I think arguments can be made by looking at these courses with these high rates of either Ds, Fs, or withdrawals, and contextualizing a move to OER that way. And OERs, frankly, I agree with this man. He was really talking about K through 12 or about high school, okay? That actually OER, because OERs do take a lot of time to develop and curate, it does, take time and cost someone's labor, right? But he sees OER as being about more than just saving money. It's about really re-envisioning the classroom in a lot of ways, or even entire programs. And I'm just now kind of researching this, this idea of open education that we're having our students create. We're constructing or setting up our classrooms in such a way that our students do collaborate, right, in the creation of meaningful artifacts. And these are artifacts that other students can use. I mean, I think all of us in developmental education have been doing this for a long time. It's just kind of nice that other people are catching up with us. That, to engage students, especially non-traditional students, but students that are coming in to college and saying, you do have valuable things to contribute. Let's create X, whatever that is, and then I'll reuse it next semester with another group of students. So I think it's very exciting. All of this is tied to this whole OER movement. So I'll wrap things up. The future here, I'm going to be, what I'm really excited about is that I'm going to move some of what we've done off of our learning management system. And what we're going to do in our comp program is begin to create our own textbook and have it openly licensed on a WordPress site that anybody can use. And I think this will be exciting. And my thought is that, of course, with our teaching assistants, our grad students would collaborate on this. Our students can add stuff, like especially their essays, great essays they've written. We put those in all the time. So there's all kinds of things that we can do, and it's really exciting. And this can be a group effort, not just Rachel sitting in her silo one summer creating this stuff, right? So a couple of caveats here. When we say quote unquote free in terms of online open educational resources, to a certain degree, it may be that we mean low cost. Well, what do I mean by that? Well, Lumen, for example, Lumen Learning, they do charge. They charge, I think, $25 per text, but that's because they're not charging for the material. They're charging for access to, they provide this, and I don't know how many of you have used Lumen, but they provide this courseware, which is, yeah, you need IT people. There are people that need to be there doing work constantly. So yeah, just keep in mind that if you're creating or using OER, there might need to be some back-end technical support. There might need to be release time. There might need to be stipends connected with all of this. But frankly, I think that there's a lot of, there's a great argument to be made to administrators about investing in OER. And the payoff for our students is just tremendous in terms of, having that textbook that first day of class. That's just great. So I'm going to stop sharing my screen if I can get my my cursor back over here, and that's a question. So there I go. All right. And I'll turn my camera on. There I am there. So that's all I had to say. Does anyone have is anyone using an OER material already?
We have a small group, so if you want to just speak up, please go ahead and do so.
Please do.
Rachel, to answer your question, I use OER materials. I actually teach in the discipline of communication studies, and upon moving to my community college that I work at in rural Oregon, that was one of my first initiatives was, so I'm in the process of still moving some of my courses to OER, but I can agree with a lot of what you shared today and the hard work that goes into it. But just to answer your question, I think I have 4 of my 7 courses use OER currently, and I'm still searching for OER for my other courses.
Have you created a textbook or?
No, I've not. So I have used other OERs authored by other communication scholars. I was also going to say we're very fortunate here in Oregon. They offer a lot of stipends or grant money for us to switch to using open education resources.
Yeah, I think SUNY at one point was offering, the big SUNY was offering local campuses some developmental money. New Paltz missed out on that because we're slow usually to adopt things like that, initiatives like that. But at one time we were. Is anyone else?
I'm working on shifting to OER. It's been something I've been trying to do for the last couple semesters, and I just decided this semester I chose a class. I teach, it's the class I'm shifting to is a technical writing class.
Oh.
Because honestly, I haven't found a textbook that I like in technical writing. So I'm like, well, we'll use this class as the first one to transition to. So
So, and I would say that that was always my issue with OER. I like stumbled into this because I, frankly, I would see the textbooks that were out there in comp, and I wasn't like just thrilled with them.
Yeah.
So but as I said, with the Lumen thing, and it was free, it's free for my students. I said, just go ahead. But then, right, you wind up changing 50% of it. So there you go. Well, I guess if we don't have any more questions, we can leave early and take a break before the next session. What do you think, Sarah?
I think that's fine. We have recorded this. I think that you've given us a lot of really useful information, Rachel. What I'm assuming is that the CADE is going to be collecting the PowerPoints, and so this would be available. And I think you have a lot of really great resources, and so I thank you.
Great. As I say, I somehow through doing this, I wound up being my campus lead, one of the like 4 people lead. I don't know how this happened. So now I've gotten all caught up in it. And as I say, I'm excited to see where it will go. It is labor, and as we all know, this type of content creation is labor intensive, and there are some equity issues there. In doing a survey of the literature, I saw that the majority of OER creators are white men with tenure. So it's like, all right, so you have the time and the space and so forth. And so there needs to be a discussion there, I think. I think the equity part of it is something that needs some thought.
We do have a hand raised. Mayana?
Hi, I'm sorry that I'm asking this question after you started talking about ending the session.
Oh, no, go ahead.
Sorry, I was curious about, you're talking about OER creation and sort of that difficulty of finding a good OER textbook, and that your faculty are working together to create an OER textbook. So I was just interested in kind of, how you're getting support from your campus for that, are you getting release time, or is this just something you are all doing on your own? Yeah, so I'm just wondering if you could just talk more about that.
Very good question. And again, it goes to the equity. I'm a non-tenure track. Even though I've been teaching where I am since 1993, I'm not on tenure track, right? So I get constantly reappointed. I've received no release time. I did receive a stipend though. And this is what I would say. If you can get buy-in from an administrator, someone, if that's the way it goes, I got buy-in from someone, and it's because of COVID, because we shifted. And I was able to get then a stipend at least over the summer to have done this last summer. So that's number one. If you can present an argument to someone with a pocket full of money and get a stipend, my campus will not give release time. So that was out of the question. In terms of, right, I'm being optimistic, but I'm thinking, because this is what we do have. We have a pool of teaching assistants who are, very much engaged with learning how, to teach in the composition classroom. So this can easily be brought into this, their training. Even if, each teaching assistant contributed a couple of pages each semester, you could see how quickly we can build this out. But you are correct. We're at the beginning of then thinking about the textbook and how that would work. But we do have the teaching assistants. And because I spoke to our provost yesterday, I think there is room for stipends. Now, to say, I figured out, I think I was being paid $10 an hour to do this, but hey, it's better than no stipend. So,
Mayana, do you have a follow-up question?
Oh, actually, yeah, I wanted to comment that, so I was very curious about this because I actually applied for and got a sabbatical approved, and my sabbatical project is creating some OER. And I'm working on creating metacognitive videos for students on basic critical thinking skills and just really basic like classroom, skills that a lot of dev ed students just don't know, and I just, and yeah, and I had to, apply for sabbatical, and I thought of this project because I'm really interested in metacognition and think that it just really, so important, especially for dev ed students and, students who are in my accelerated classes. But I definitely would not have had time to do this. And I often think, with my colleagues at my institution, and I teach at Kapiolani Community College here in Honolulu, Hawaii.
oh,
I always think that it would be so great if we all, our colleagues, if we all created a textbook together, but we're also overworked. No one has time. So, I'm just grateful and glad that I have this time to work on this project, but that's only because I was able to get sabbatical, right?
I am what you're doing sounds, I'm going to send you an email because I would love, and I hope next year you come back and talk about what you did.
Yeah, for sure. And let me put my email address.
Okay.
Okay, I'll put it in the chat there. Yeah, so, and I have to learn too, and this taking me a lot of like collaboration with the OER folks at my campus to kind of figure out where should I put these videos so that then people at other institutions can also use these videos, right? And I'm also planning on doing some professional developments, workshops with my colleagues after I finish these videos.
Yeah.
Because I'm going to focus it, specifically on writing and composition, which is my field, right? But I'm sure my other colleagues have very specific critical thinking skills for their disciplines. So I kind of want to use it as models for them to make their own videos and their own OERs.
Oh, wow. This is exciting. What platform are you going to use to make the videos?
I'm assuming that I'm just going to use either Zoom or Screencast-O-Matic or Loom, the same
Yeah.
things that I use for making my instructor videos, but then kind of figuring out how to, place it somewhere online or in a library archive that can be easily found by other educators, right? That's the part that I don't really get. And so I have to figure that out. But, I'm asking the OER, the OER folks at my campus to help me with that kind of thing.
Are they librarians?
Yes.
Okay, yeah.
Yes, they're like the OER librarians. Yeah.
We don't, that's our big ask of the provost yesterday was, hey, we need a librarian here. Needs,
Okay. Yeah. 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 So thank you so much for sharing.
Oh no, I'm excited about what you're doing. Wow. Yeah, you got to come back next year and share what you did.
Okay. Hopefully it'll be okay.
I'm sure it will be. Oh, that's great. Oh, what a great way to end this because this is a whole other level of what you can do, This is great. The multimedia creation.
Okay, so Rachel, are we wrapping up here?
We're wrapping up. I thank you so much for coming. It was so nice to talk to everybody. And I
Thank
wish
you.
you all the best.
And we have stopped the recording, and these recordings will be uploaded to CADE so that you will have access to them. Thank you all so much for coming, and I'll see you at 2 at the next session.
Thank you, Sarah.
You're welcome.